If Monster Hunter and Genshin Impact had a baby, then this would be it. Alright then, Biro, Biro, Biro. Now, you guys might be wondering how I even got invited to TGS, or Tokyo Game Show 2025, in the very first place, and it's all thanks to this game that we're talking about right here. This is gonna be Limit Zero Breakers, created by NCSoft, and your streamer actually got an opportunity to get invited down, flown all the way from Singapore to Japan with the flight paid for, expenses, most of the expenses paid for, hotel paid for, and they basically got us the tickets into TGS to take a look in their booths, take a look at the gameplay, and see basically what this game is all about. So huge shout out to NCSoft for making this entire trip happen. So the first part is basically just visiting the NCSoft building from there itself. We basically went all the way there to the HQ in Tokyo. So we played the actual game in the little room itself, and afterwards I'm gonna be transferring back into TGS, where we play more of Limit Zero Breakers across all of the different devices. So for the PC, mobile, the couple of the stream decks, etc., are fully decked out within all of their booths, as well as seeing some very interesting events. So for example, on the very last day of the entire TGS, we actually got the VAs to go up on stage and do a live playthrough with the three of them together, as well as a VA session. One of them, which is gonna be the VA of Subaru, which is absolutely insane. They actually got to see Subaru in real life, so that was really cool. I also even got a chance to talk with the developers themselves alongside Unreal Dreamer. Both of us asked him a lot of different questions as to how it goes in the development of this game, what can we expect, and the devs themselves has shown that they are extremely, they are huge fans of Monster Hunter, which is where you can definitely see a lot of this influence where you're going to be coming from as well. Other than that, I'm just going to be breaking down to you guys exactly what Limit Zero Breakers is all about. Like I mentioned at the start of the video, this is very reminiscent, or at least somebody that has played Monster Hunter. The mechanics involved with like a hunt going against these monsters within this anime style RPG gacha game, right? So the combat is very fast paced as well as action oriented. It's definitely not a turn-based combat. So if you have played games before like Wuthering Waves, Zenless Zone Zero, Genshin Impact, all that kind of stuff, then you are going to be feeling right at home. In fact, the actual moves within the game has a lot of elements that does remind me of Monster Hunter Rise, as well as Iceborne, Roar, all the kind of stuff. In fact, if you guys have played Monster Hunter, then this game does remind me a lot of these kind of elements, where you bring yourself a team, bring a really big ass weapon, and go into town against these monsters, right? So we do have our dodging, parry, as well as counter attacks to dodge, prevent damage, counter the monsters, getting their respective breakpoints in order to separate the skilled as well as the even more skilled player base, right? Then they do have this entire elemental system, which is very similar to Genshin Impact. This is basically combining the different elements within Limit Zero Breakers, so you can mix both elements. So for example, if you're going to be mixing like a fire and water, you can also mix them as a water and fire. So two different elements can actually have two different reactions, even though they are both coming together as one single combination, right? So there's going to be a lot of mechanics tied to this entire elemental reaction thingy. I tried to explore a couple of things, but I didn't really understand exactly what I was doing. But just on the elemental reaction is going to be a huge part of this gameplay. So for example, matching the right element against the respective bosses that we got ourselves to play is going to be crucial in dealing your break bar, right? So because using the right element will allow us to get them to the break stage as fast as possible, and then once they are actually like, weakness broken and they are down, they are going to be taking a tremendous amount, or at least like from what I've seen, easily 3 to 4 times higher the amount of damage you're going to be dealing within this break stage. So using them on element is going to be very important. So there's pretty much no limit as to what possible elemental reactions there can be. So a lot of creativity can be involved in this gameplay. Alright, then we do have this unique mode which is called the break mode, where you can push this big button where you see the NPC slam down the giant harpoon, literally looks like a Dragonator from Monster Hunter, right into the enemy for like a cinematic, like absolute cinema finisher, which is probably going to be triggered all the way towards the end of the fight. And if you meet some certain conditions, if you use some certain units or whatever, then you can get off this finisher, which is just very satisfying, right? So that is pretty much the basic combinations as to the break, the parry, as well as the elemental reaction. So every single different unit, as per your gacha unit, SSR and SRs, they're also going to be having the different weapon types. So your different hammers, your swords, your bows, all that kind of stuff will all have their unique move sets, which is going to be very similar to a lot of the gacha games we have been playing nowadays. And speaking about these different different movesets. Team building is also going to be a very pivotal portion of this entire aspect. So you want to build your team of 3 going up against these giant monsters. And one little cool thing is that when you're actually switching around these 3 units between slot 1, slot 2, and slot 3, they also each have their unique animations, just to breathe a little bit more of a life into these kind of small things within the game itself, even though it is basically purely for cosmetics. And speaking about team building, then this is gonna be where the main appeal of, I would say, where Limit Zero Breaker is gonna be coming from, and that is gonna be their cooperative 3-player raid as well as boss fight, right? So this is one of those few fights where it really synergizes this game as like a very similar to Monster Hunter, where you can do this online co-op with 2 other players, so 3-player co-op against these boss raids. So you try the crab guy, the dragon guy, or the golem guy, all that kind of stuff, and we also saw the VAs for them themselves going ahead with this 3-player co-op, which show how much faster players can actually clear these different bosses if you're going to be going up against co-op, as well as compared to if you're going to be doing them solo, right? Because once you're going to be doing them in co-op, all of your units are going to be out on the field at the exact same time, which makes the monster a lot more manageable. So not only do you do the elemental reaction systems a lot more frequently, you can also draw aggro as a player. So if you guys do play Monster Hunter, so somebody's going to be a tank, join the aggro, and the rest of the DPS backline, they can just freely cast their spells, freely cast their attacks. And this is where I believe the most fun aspect of Limit Zero Breaker is going to be coming from, right? And speaking about this 3-player content, it is also the main structure of how this game is going to be like, which is very similar to like a monster hunting structure where you battle these massive monsters, at least from what I've seen as the core gameplay from TGS. I didn't see any mob stages, it would just immediately jump straight into the action by fighting the giant boss itself, similar to, once again, Monster Hunter. So you can see a lot of parallels. As of where it stands, Limit Zero Breakers is going to be designed for both PC as well as mobile with cross-platform support, and the monetization is most likely going to be a gacha, but we didn't really get to see what a gacha mechanic is going to be like. We only got to play with every single one of these units with their respective mechanics as well as team building. So in the future date, then they're going to be releasing this more information, right? And speaking about the units, you can take a look at their character designs. Definitely very, some of them do look very good. They do have the MC, so there is probably going to be male characters, more of them releasing out in the future, but majority of the cast so far is going to be tied to your female units. So that's pretty much it for the gameplay for Limit Zero Breakers, at least for my first impressions within TGS. And speaking about my first impression, these are just going to be my thoughts on what this game has to offer as of now. So as you guys can see from the combat animations, everything, the game booth itself, it looks very clean for a game that basically haven't even gotten like a CBT1. Alright, so if you want to compare this to like as a alpha test build, it looks very polished. I don't really know when this game is going to be launched, but from where it stands right now, it didn't really feel, I didn't really see any major bugs. All of the animations were super smooth, the sound effects could be improved a little bit more, but generally speaking, the graphics are going to be more or less there, which is, I think, is pretty impressive for a first build version that they're going to be releasing to the public, at least to what we have seen so far, right? But that being said, I do feel that the HP of the bosses, especially, at least to be completely fair, I was completely clueless and we didn't really manage to make full use of the elemental system. So definitely there's a lot of room to improve as a player with the skills as well. But generally I felt that the boss fights can be a little bit long. I'm not sure if that's intentional or if this is just specific to the TGS build itself. But every single one of the boss fights, if you are not going to be breaking them and if you're constantly getting hit, you can't get dodged and you're constantly, getting tossed around. Like for example, if this is the first time you ever want to try a action RPG, anime, Monster Hunter style kind of game, you're probably going to be in for a very rude awakening because they are not easy, right? Considering that this is like the first ever iteration of a test, so maybe the casual player base might need to get a little bit more used to the skill itself, which is going to ultimately based on how comfortable players are going to be feeling playing Limit Zero Breakers in the long term. Aside from that, I can't really tell what is like meta because I didn't really play every single one of the units that they've offered to us, SR and SR, but generally speaking, it does appear that getting the right elements to break the monsters as fast as possible is the most straightforward to deal more damage compared to if you're going to be using off-element units, right? So as long as you're going to be paired out of the range right element with your elemental reaction system, getting them into the break bar, you're going to see your damage just explode up to a extremely high degree. Between the range as well as the melee weapons, I'm preferably leaning more towards the melee because I can't really aim for nuts. This is just myself personally. I really like to get up close and personal to the monster just to deal as much damage as possible, deal with the break, drawing their aggression, right? Sometimes getting a couple of perfect dodges is also extremely satisfying. So with that, we have come to the end of my first impressions and my overall experiences getting invited down by NCSoft and playing Limit Zero Breakers for the first time. Once again, thank you so much Limit Zero Breakers and NCSoft for making this entire TGS happen. Looking forward to see how this game is going to be turning out in a couple of months from now. And that's pretty much it for today's content. All the best for Gacha pools. I'll see you guys next time. Take care.